episode of Standing 8. I'm Paul Fitzgerald. I'm joined by my co-host, three-time world champion and Boxing Hall of Famer Jeff Fenech.
Great to be here, Paul.
And the voice of Australian boxing, Ben Damon.
G'day, Paul. Good to be here, mate. Fantastic guest we have today from when rugby league was at its absolute pinnacle, in my opinion. Former Balmain Tigers, New South Wales and Kangaroos hooker Benny Elias. Great to see you, Benny.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm very honoured, actually, sitting next to one of the greatest Australian sports person in this country, without a doubt, and it's certainly an honour and always great to rub shoulders with old Jethro.
I'm surprised you're allowed in here because he's such tight mates with Mario Fenech, your great rival on the field.
Mario, straight into it, eh? Let's get straight into it, eh? Why not?
Let me tell you guys something. I played against Benny when I was 17. He was 18. I played for League for New and he played for Balmain. And although Balmain flogged us, I think that Benny went on to really revolutionise the hooking position. I think, like I said, I love rugby league and I love that I would have loved to play. But when I think of hookers, Benny was, for his size and for everything else, was most probably the most skillful hooker that
must have been the toughest.
No doubt about that. Hiding behind Roach all the time, he was tough.
Just joking. I was very lucky to have Big Blocky there, that's for sure. Yeah. Without a doubt, if it wasn't for Blocker, that would be, it was like a yin and yang, me and Block, and made sure that we always respected each other's strengths and weaknesses, and on and off the football paddock that would be, and we most certainly had a great career together, all of our lives.
Hey, Ben, the first thing I want to bring up, and I know it's a biting incident that just happened on the weekend, and Proctor. Listen, I know his mouth was open around, but I didn't see him actually bite down at any stage. I'm just saying I didn't see. But I know a story about another mate of mine that got sent off. What did you do, Benny? What did you do to my mate Mario that day, mate?
Well,
it still haunts him to this day.
It was a good
You got to admire it.
Especially at this time.
It's called gamesmanship, Jeff. I mean, you've done it in your world. You've done it all your life. You know, if you get the best of your opposition, whether it be verbally, you get the better of them. You just psychologically would always berate them and make sure get the better of them. And if you could do that, well, then you had the edge on top of them.
Well,
and this particular time with Mario in a semi-final against South Sydney, it was very important that we win this game. And they had a great pack. They had Les Davis and Gus Gould was in the side, Boyle, and obviously
Michael
Mario
Andrews, the Ramblings.
Oh, mate, they had a tough pack. And you don't get much tougher than Jeff Fenech on the foot. Mario on the football paddock, and it was just one of those things that there was that feud between the two of us for such a long time, going back into the SG Ball Jersey Flag game in the Junior Rugby League. So we grew up all together, and the likeliness between me and Mario was frightening.
Yeah,
we both wanted the same jersey. We both come from big families, ethnic families. We both have basically the same values in life, and we all were veering for that one position. And there's only one person that can have it. It's just like Jeff in a ring. There can only be one person to hold the belt up, and we had to make sure that every time you went toe to toe with him, you had to do something extraordinary. And this particular time, I just said to Blocker, I said, "Block, start a stink." And with Blocker, you had no problem whatsoever.
You do it with pleasure.
He gave me a big wink and I said, nudge, nudge, wink. And you'd know that Block had put it on. And we went to the scrum. He gave Bundy the biggest right hook. And, mate, it was on for young and old. But before the scrum, I was saying to Block, just make sure you. I bit my hand as hard as I possibly could. And we came flung out of the scrum. And I went and I said to the referee, it was Kevin Roberts at the time, it was a semi-final game. I said, have a go at what Fenech just done. Look at this. And he goes, don't worry, Benny, I saw it all. Fenech, you're off. And we went on to win that game. But we were in all sorts of strife because, the South Sydney Balmain games, they were just gold, weren't they? Just to watch those two at the Sydney Cricket Ground, and the expectations were overwhelming with cricket. And we won, and we won that game pretty well.
Well, Benny, Mario, come in, mate.
Was Mario your
this is your life.
Was he your greatest rival, do you think? Because you had a lot of them with all the Walters brothers as well.
I did. Look, I got to say, I got the utmost respect for Mario. Mate, you don't meet a more tougher bloke than Mario, and he would be probably one of my greatest opponents playing the game of rugby league throughout my whole career. And look, he played it strong, he played it tough, and look, he was as honest as the day come. And Look, you just knew that when you were playing South Sydney, Mario was a big bloke. Mario's 6'2", like he's a big boy, strong.
Yeah.
So here I am, I'm half his size, so I had to be very careful that he didn't put one on my chin. But mate, as you were saying earlier, Jeff, luckily I had the big fella Blocker Roach next to me who would always make sure that I was looked after. And so if Mario was after me, he was after me and Block. It was a packed deal.
Yeah. Benny, you were pretty used to playing as a smaller bloke on the field after what you did at school. I think it was in year 9 that you played in the first team at Holy Cross. Like you sort of came through ahead of your time.
Yeah, look, it was funny, I was in year 9 and the coach, I had 2 great coaches then at the school, John O'Brien and Kevin Smythe.
Cool, isn't it? Chucking you in.
And they called me up and I'll never forget, I went down to Cressy Road at Holy Cross there at Ryde, and I went down there and I packed into a scrum and these blokes were shaving and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're shaving and after trying to have a cigarette and I'm thinking, these are real bang, they get in their cars and I'm on this 15-year-old kid, between 15 and 18. So it's a big difference,
a huge difference.
In development of your body in particular.
Yeah.
And knowing these people were just, like they were the top of the school and here I am, I'm putting my arm around both of them and going into a scrum and I'm just as scared as hell. But
that's when scrums were scrums too.
It was very competitive and it was tough. You had to compete for the ball and it was tough in there. Every scrum was a competition and you just never took anything for granted because if you go in half-hearted in any scrum, you're going to get hurt and hurt badly. So, it was very intense.
How did you get involved in rugby league? Coming from a Lebanese background and family, it would have been unusual to, be involved in a sport like rugby league.
It's a very good question, mate. I remember the bloke, God rest his soul, Frank Hyde, the great Frank Hyde, used to call the football on the radio, 2SM. And I come from a family of 7 children. I have 3 brothers. And the 3 of us used to go and play in the backyard and listen to Frank Hyde on the radio. And you'd want to go and you want to impersonate your heroes. And my heroes back then were the Larry Corriwas, the Greg Coxes, Neil Pringles, the Balmain, and they were Balmain through and through. And Balmain was my life, Yeah. But I've always respected people like the Graham Eadies and Ron Cooten, the players of those past who I grew up with. And then Rex Mossop, it came on TV, Rex Mossop on Channel 7, listening to him every Sunday. It was a Hunter Douglas, game of the round, and we'd watch it and watch it with my family, and I just couldn't. And at the age of 7, I just wanted to play rugby league. And at the school, they were asking, who wants to play? And I thought, mate, I put it up and they said, oh, no, you're too small, mate. I said, no, but I want to play. I really want to play. I know the rules. And from that day onwards, ever since I could really walk, I suppose, I just loved the game of rugby league.
What was it like as a young Lebanese fella trying to play
very
rugby
tough.
league?
Very tough.
They wouldn't have welcomed you, I wouldn't have thought.
No, well, I was just a little wog. And, mate, you talk about being, being slanged and word called Jeff. I mean, you'd have went the same. But this is the Aussie game. This is Australian game. It's not we're the wog ball, the round ball, and that's what I'm. And mate, it was very, very cruel growing up. In the days, the opposition were crueler than your own. And they would slander. They would, what the hell? What are you doing here? You spit, you're a wog. There you go. You should be playing the wog ball. Yeah. All of that. But that didn't faze me from the game. The game was just too good. I enjoyed playing the game. Amazing. Like there was nothing more than in my life. I used to count the days so I could play on the weekend, And when I got home from school, we'd go down the park and play with my mates.
Every day in the park.
And they were the days when you'd get home and you'd play in the park, wouldn't you, Jeff? Yeah. You'd get out there and
no computers.
And it was a joy. It was. And mate, and you'd play until the sun came down, and then you'd go home and have a feed.
You only done homework if you were smart. If you weren't, you just didn't do it at all.
And it would have helped, Benny, that you were very, very good at it because at Holy Cross, did you win Player of the Year in the Commonwealth Bank Cup twice?
I did, Ben. I was in year 10 when I won.
Would have ever done that, would they?
I don't think so. Not even Peter Sterling. I don't think Sterling would have. No, I don't think so. I'd be interested if there was anyone that had won that twice. But I'll tell you what that did do. That sprung me into buying a property. It was $3,000 back then, and a property was worth about $50,000. And I won that twice. So my father said, "Son, go buy yourself something." Especially a property out west.
How old were you?
I was all of 50. I was 16. I
Wow.
was 17 actually. I actually
17, bought a property
at 17. So my old man we put a deposit on. He goes, let the people in the rent pay it off. And Still to today, I still own that property.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And you think
Where
about
is
it.
it? Sorry?
It's out of Parramatta.
Okay.
It's out of Parramatta. I'm actually about to develop it. It's quite a big block of land, and
That's the one you promised me to do the development with.
that's right. but you go to see how great this game has been for me. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't realise. I mean, you get a lump sum of $3,000 way back in 1979. You think, mate, that's a lot of money.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And for a school kid, you could never dream. In wildest dream, even in today's world, it's very hard for the knockabout bloke today to save $3,000.
Yeah.
And this game all of a sudden gave me a check of $3,000, and I just had to work out what do you want to do with it and make the most of it, because this may never ever happen again to you. And you never in your wildest dreams ever think that you're going to go on to play first grade or for your state or especially for your country. So at that time, I thought it was like a one lotto, and you make the most of what you do with the time.
Is it true at one point the Tigers were paying you with property instead of cash in the 80s?
Yes, that's true. For my contract, Balmain, I mean, there's always a cash flow issue, whether it be a business, but in particular in the game of rugby league. And the Tigers had built up a very big property portfolio over the years because what they do with their machines, the money in the machines, their poker machines in the Glees Club, they went and bought property, and a lot of it was inherited to the club.
Yeah.
So instead of, I suggested one day, and I flippantly, because you didn't have managers back then, you represented yourself, and I just flippantly asked Keith Barnes at the time, who was our CEO, and God bless him, mate, the greatest CEO of all times and greatest man. I asked him, well, you got a couple of properties behind why don't we just play me in property? I'll stay here for the next 3 years, and I own these two properties.
Smart move.
And he says, really? I said, yeah, as long as I get the rent from them so I can live on a week. He goes, effective immediately. So we bought the house, and the rest was history. Yeah. And I mean, again, still today, I still own those properties.
It's a pretty smart move from a
I can't believe that. It's pretty, pretty incredible. That I think
there's not many
18, 19, 20.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, I mean, I can share this now. There's one of the properties there. It's got to be worth $3.5 million, and I played 2 years for it. Now that's tax free.
Yeah.
Now to go buy a property today for $3.5 million, you have to earn $7 million after tax. It's worth $3.5 million.
And then the stamp duty and everything else.
All that. So still, no player today would be on that type of money. We're thinking 1.1 million is.
When I'm thinking back, then I thought I was your manager. You said to me,
I should have managed you, Jeff.
Maybe you should have.
Maybe I should have.
Oh wow, that would have been great.
Mate, with your money, my
think,
goodness, mate, you couldn't spell Matraville when you started off. Now you own it. Hey,
it was Marrickville, but close.
Marrickville.
All right.
And what did I say, Matraville? Marrickville. I beg your pardon.
You keep thinking about Mario, mate.
Yeah, I can't help myself. I walk into your place, you got photos of you and Mario all over the place. He says, welcome. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mario walked in, don't worry.
There was never a doubt that you'd go to the Balmain Tigers, being such a fan.
Ben,
more money elsewhere potentially.
Ben, you know what? I signed my first contract. I got picked that year at the age of 15 to go play on the Australian Schoolboys.
Yep.
And again, you had people like Neil Hunt, the Rampling brothers. You had Ian Barclay. You had Mortimer. You had some big name players, and I was honoured to be awarded to be picked on that Australian Schoolboys tour.
Yeah.
And here I am again, as I say, 15-year-old going around the world with these blokes who are 18. It's
a big thing.
It's a huge thing, mate. It was, and I'm just thinking, how good is life, But
listen, a lot of guys get chosen at 15, and they don't live up to the expectations.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just not saying it but Benny, what you end up doing, and like I said, I think you revolutioned the hooking position, and you turned it into something special. Now when I think of rugby league, because I'm a huge Steve Waters fan and Cameron Smith fan now, and Benny Badiris, but I think you were the forebearer. You led the way for all these guys. And like I said, Mario again was a great hooker, but Mario was also a great front row and second row. Different mould than Benny. Benny was a little
different styles.
Mario was that big guy, but
Well, I suppose, Jeff, at a young age, you had to work out that you had to be better than the next bloke. In your fight, the way you fought, you always had to be better than your opposition.
So Benny, I want to ask you a question. everybody talks about heart. I don't believe in it. I think everybody's heart's the same size. What did you do extra to make yourself better? Forget about, because like I said, people see people, because I don't believe nothing comes from that. I believe it comes from your mental preparation, the preparation that you've done earlier.
Yeah.
You must have worked much harder.
It's a very good question, Jeff. You're right, and if you have a look at the psyche and the mindset of how and why did you go to that level. There was an article in the paper. Ian Walsh, God rest his soul, was a great hooker for Australia and St George Dragons, one of the legends. He was he used to write an article in the Telegraph, ghostwritten by Ray Chesterton, who's a very good journalist. And Ray Chesterton wrote this article one day saying that this young kid, he's got all the right marks for but he's too small. Yeah. And he was too small. And I got that article and I cut it out and I put it on the fridge at home. And I just reminded myself every time I went to the fridge that, my God, and that was a reminder. And so I got determined and just to prove this bloke wrong, for nothing more than I wanted to prove this wrong. Because, as successful athletes, they always try and prove the knockers different.
Of course.
And the only way of doing that
success
is hard work, isn't it, Jeff?
Hard work and success.
You roll your sleeves up. And, mate, I was very fortunate. I have two very beautiful parents. One, my old man passed away not so long ago, God rest his soul. But, mate, they were my greatest education. They were my greatest education because they worked 3-4 jobs a day and they made sure that there was food on the table for their kids and there was shelter for them. And, mate, that is the inspiration that I got as a young kid growing up. And always you always wanted to defy what people said you can't do, that you made sure that you did do. Yeah. And I look at these people today. I look for the person today who brings up 7 children and works 3 jobs. They're not around anymore. No. You don't find them. I mean, 3 different jobs.
It's impossible to do that today. In this day and age, I mean, in no disrespect, who would tell anybody to have 7 children in the climate that we live in today? I would tell my children not to have children, but we live in it. Yeah, and exactly what you're saying, but I remember my mum. I was only talking about my mum to John Jarrett yesterday because he's doing my life story, and I said, I see my mum in the morning. She made us breakfast. She went to work. I seen her when we came home from school because she worked in the day and she worked in the night when we were going to sleep. So my mum worked 3 jobs and my dad couldn't work because he was sick. But that's why I had the luxury to do what I'd done and to enjoy life. And isn't
that the inspiration, Jeff? If that's your inspiration and the will to want to win, because you came from a very humble background. And you defy the odds of not being able to do something. And we never had all this stuff growing up, did we, Jeff? We didn't have the luxury of going on holidays and going to private schools. It was tough stuff. I mean, Alan Jones says they call it Struggle Street. Yeah. Well, mate, there's no more Struggle Street than this bloke on my left, Jeff, who deterred all the knockers. And just defied all the people who said he couldn't do it, and mate became our greatest sportsman, not just greatest boxer, one of our greatest. And mate, and I know that I've known Jeff for many, many years, and you just see the quality. You see the quality of the bloke that make you a champion, whether it be rugby league, boxing, tennis, cricket, whatever. It doesn't matter, but it's those qualities that you look at. And Jeff had mate. He'd get in that ring and he'd work his backside off like from morning till dusk, and he'd always focus, and his mind was always focused on what he was about, and that's what I did also with my. So Benny,
because you were so much smaller than I was too. I mean, I made sure that I was fitter than everybody else. I'd do extra runs. I'd obviously try to tackle more than anybody else. What was it that you really worked on, knowing that you were smaller than them?
Well, I had to do something different, didn't I, Jeff? I mean, the normal hooker was the bloke that goes to the scrum, wins the ball in the scrum, and gets to the dummy half and passes the ball. I had to do something different because I was small. I could just do. They wouldn't just do it. They were a dime a dozen. So I decided I had to do something different, become the creative bloke from the dummy half, so I could kick. I could be creative. I could do the things that the person wouldn't do that wore the number 9. Well, back then it was the number 12. And I had to make sure that I had to do something different. So you look inside your box of wisdoms and you have a look around and you think, what can I do? So I try to be creative. I try to run from, try and create and set up the play. What the halfback would do, I would try and do that at dummy half. And I started kicking from dummy half, and people would think, what the hell's this kid doing? Yeah. I mean, and you chip kick from dummy half, you go to the line and chip kick, and you think, oh my God, and it was different. So, and that's, I think, what brings evolution is doing things that you really test. You defy what the norm is, and you try to do something extraordinarily different. And that's what I did. I did it. Not that I knew that I was doing it purposely. I didn't set out to do it.
So it wasn't a conscious decision.
It wasn't. It was just making sure that I wanted to be different. And I used to wear the green thing around my head to make sure, hey, have a look at me. I got so paranoid that I used to wear, and I'd make sure I'd wear the brightest boots possible that I could, or put tape around those boots to make sure that they would watch you. And that's how paranoid I was. And so it was that evolution of doing things differently that became, part of the number 9 jersey today.
And it probably helped your success that you were so entertaining to watch. Your style of play was entertaining for fans and for those selecting teams.
Well, again, you look at the norm of the hooker before me, and I wanted, I suppose, to do something different. My heroes were always the halfbacks, who always used to do things. They were the creative people. Yeah. So I try to implement that creativeness into the number 9 jersey. Yeah. And I think it was that, and that's what it started. And it's great. And I feel good now when I see a player, a hooker, doing things at dummy half. And, mate, there's no one without probably the greatest, or he is the greatest, in Cameron Smith. When you see him doing all these tricks, you think, that's great.
Yeah, I did that.
He watched somebody earlier.
Hey?
He may have watched somebody
He may
earlier.
have, many
I'm sure
years
he
ago.
did. You watch them all. Yeah, it's like us going through some tapes of old fighters that fought in my weight division. And
it is the same, isn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, 100%.
And you look at the people before you and you try.
What do you think? I want to be better than that. What can I do to be better than that? How can I be better than that? Like I said, without doubt, well, like I said, Benny Elias, Steve Walters, Danny Badiris, and now Cameron Smith. Wow.
Yeah.
Benny, we probably have to talk about a couple of grand finals in the 80s, unfortunately.
Sure. No, don't be unfortunate about it.
Yeah.
Mate, to make a grand final is an honour in itself.
1988 in itself, after the run that you had to have, I can't remember, was it 10 games or 9 out of 10
it was
you
9.
had to win?
It was 9 in a row we had to win.
Yeah. To make the grand final, and you did it against a very strong Canterbury team. What an amazing run.
There was we were at 50. We were at 55 to 1 to win a premiership at that time, and we had to win 9 out of 10, and we had an extraordinary journey. And I'll never forget a bloke. I was at the Leafs Club working as a development officer with Keith Barnes, and Keith Barnes said, "Benny, I've got this bloke. We've just signed him up from England.
Oh,
his name's Ellery Hanley, and I'm just about to pick him up at the airport. You want to come out and see him?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." Yeah. So we drive out to the airport, pick Ellery Hanley up. He's as black as the ace of spades and built like the Adonis, mate. He's just like, wow.
A big boy,
I think, wow, and immaculately dressed, beautifully. You can smell, and I thought, wow, this bloke. And mate, and all he started, we got in the car, and he knew who I was, obviously playing for England, and he started talking to me about the game, about Warren Ryan, the coach, plays, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this bloke is the ultimate professional. Like, didn't drink. Very, very, very particular with his diet. And in 88, the diet and all that, you weren't ready for all that stuff. And this bloke was so careful, always the first bloke at train, always the last to leave. Yeah. And you thought, oh my God. And this bloke was special. I mean, he came with 8 out of the 10 and we had to win him. And Ellery Hanley made the impact and just catalyzed, just brought the Tigers to the attention of everybody. This superstar from England, who was the English captain, had come to Australia, and he became part of the Balmain club. And I'll never forget it. And Simply the Best was playing. Tina Turner promoted Simply the Best that year. And it was Simply the Best, because Simply the Best in 1980, it was a dream come true where you defied all of the odds. And you come and you get into a grand final against the Bulldogs. And this great man, the journey. We had to have a playoff against North Sydney at North Sydney Oval to get into the semis. And so it was nail-biting stuff. It was do or die stuff every moment, every minute, every second. And we got to the grand final.
And you would have won the game probably if Terry Lamb hadn't taken out.
We would definitely have won that game without a doubt.
Terry must have learned something from you, what you done to Mario too. See that? Hey, stop teaching all your tricks, Benny. Hey, stop teaching your tricks, mate.
But he maimed him. He certainly. So Terry Lamb, he had one intention and one intention only. I mean, the great Ellery Hanley was without doubt our most impact player.
Yeah, of course.
And and the rest is history.
Early in the
we
game
knocked him out
before half time.
I scored a try in that game. Our first try of the grand final. It was the first game on the SFS, 1988. It was our first grand
Stadium,
final.
yeah.
It was incredible. There's a lot of history, and Tina Turner being there. It was just, and I could go back that far. And that's what this great game has given us. And Jeff I'm sure Jeff can share this with me. When you can go back to 1988, and I can give you almost every tackle of that game, that is the special part of why you play the game.
So if Mario was here, that's because you only made 2.
Yeah.
Joking, Ben.
Oh, come on. No. Look, poor old Mario. Look, he wasn't able to enjoy a grand final. I had the luxury of 2 grand finals. Both of them, obviously, we lost in both of them.
Yeah.
But just the privilege to be in a grand final.
Oh, it's a big special day.
It is
the build-up. The build-up.
And it's it's your 7-year-old, when you fall in love, and you asked me at the beginning of this podcast, you asked me what made you. It was the dream of listening to a caller call in a grand final.
Yeah.
And I go to bed at night as a young kid at 7 years of age, and you're closing your dream.
Yeah.
And you dream to be that person. And that day came true for me. Whether we won or lost didn't matter. But that dream came true where there is a capacity crowd. You're playing football with the best of the best in the world, and you're doing something that you love.
Yeah.
And my God, that 88 grand final was very, very special to us. And look, unfortunately, the Bulldogs, congratulations, they were a very, very strong pack.
Not just that, they were so well drilled. I mean, look at some of the players that came out of the Tigers team. Some great players.
Well, yeah. Then you go on to 89, Jeff. You play in the Canberra Raiders, and they also, that was the grand final.
Yeah.
Everyone we were odds on to win. Everyone.
I was at that game. It was
Yeah, so was I. Incredible. Yeah, my dad was a big Balmain Tigers fan. We were at 88 and 89.
Yeah,
but how do you look back on what happened in 89? And there's so many, there's folklore around that game.
It's good you both say that. You both remember exactly where you were. I remember when Costa, when Jeff had the world champion fights. I can tell you the moments where I was at the time.
Yeah.
And for people like yourselves to reminisce 32 years, 31 years down the track, you think, oh my God, how special is it?
Yeah.
And if we can bring that, and if I became part of that history, and for you two talking about remembering exactly where, I remember when Lady Di, where I was when Lady Di, had the car when she passed away.
Yeah.
I remember when Elvis Presley died. I mean, they're the moments you think, oh my God, so far back, I've had that impact on you. And for you two to say that is extraordinary. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. What about how you think back on what happened through the course of that day? There was a lot of folklore that has sort of sprung up since the 89 grand final, stories about the crossbar and the jerseys in particular and other bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's like Elvis is still alive, isn't it? Well, you hear him all. And the beauty was Jeff, when we sat down, he goes, did you hear about the one about the crossbar? when the CEO, the Canberra Raiders CEO, he got on there and actually said, well, the compliance level and height was
2 inches too high.
Was too, and that would have made the absolute difference to
for
us.
Context, for those who may not remember the game, Benny tried to kick a field goal to win the match, and it hit the crossbar. And if the crossbar had been a couple inches lower, would have gone over, and you would have won.
Yeah. No, look. Again, you go back. I mean, you can't be ashamed of losing against that great side. I mean, they became.
And the great thing is, people talk about winning and losing. Because I talk to people, we used to have a sign in the gym that winning is everything. It's the only thing. But I think it's a really unpositive sign, because I tell people, as long as you try your best to win, and if you gave your best and you come second, you still win, because you learn and your desire is better for that. So, like I said, I kind of think.
Yeah, but Jeff, you never had second place in your vocabulary.
Yeah, well,
mate, you never.
Well,
mate,
I didn't want to come second.
You leave nothing. I've seen you train. You leave nothing in the dressing room.
I was blessed. I was on my own, Benny. It was all in my own hands. You're with another 12 guys.
If I'm not feeling well, I can go on the blind side and get away. You in the boxing ring, you can't go anywhere.
There's nowhere to hide.
My God, that is the toughest sport, and I respect you talk about toughness. These boxers. I mean, if you haven't done your homework. In rugby league or any team sport, you can go and have a bludge on the side. You can get away with it. But, mate, if you're a boxer and you're up against your opponent, mate, there is no corner you can hide.
I remember when the Parramatta team came up and did a bit of sparring with me one day. It was so funny. I think I sparred Scotty Mann and Brett Kenny. It was so funny, even when you're so much smaller than them, mate, and you just tap them, they get the biggest surprise, especially when you get into the body.
The fitness, they couldn't get over the fitness.
Yeah. Yeah, but we train. We were blessed that through Johnny Lewis, we had Balmain train with us, the Bulldogs train with us, and we trained. Well, I loved rugby league, so we had so many rugby league players up there. It was amazing.
And it's funny you say that, Jeff, because you know what? I wouldn't trade if you asked me to play in today's world of rugby league versus when I played back in the 80s and 90s, I wouldn't trade that in for anything. And the boxing world too, the focus, the energy and the importance of the boxer back in your time.
Yeah, the 80s and 90s were an amazing year. I think it was an amazing era for all sport. I mean, things, of course, revolutionised and things have got better and, everything's changing, but
you wouldn't trade it. But I mean, the boxing today versus back when you boxed, I used to be so passionate. You brought
even a footy game back then to me was a real footy game. I don't know, it's a little different today. All these new rules, and you can't tackle hard, you can't shot and charge.
It was better to watch in your day. Like, is that just our nostalgia?
I think it's nostalgia. Yeah. I think it's it's the old fella in the pub saying, "Oh mate, back in my days when we."
Is that what it is though?
I think it is. Yeah, because in another 30 years' time, people are going to say this year was probably better than what we.
But I remember growing up, and the footy players all had a job. I remember the Parramatta players doing the garbage.
That's
run,
right.
They'd come to my house and they'd pick up the garbage and all that sort of stuff. It was a totally different era of sport before the professionalism
and it is. And I don't look. And I tell you because. At a very young age, back then you'd retire at the age of 30, 31 years of age, and you're in there for a very, very limited time, just like Jeff's sport. You're very limited at the time and it goes so quickly. You don't think it does, but you blink an eye and you're gone and then you're finished and you're out and you think, my God, if I was to go back and do that again, I'd do it differently, The professionalism today is
without diet and rest.
It's just enormous.
Like I said, we evolve. We're learning things every day. But like I said, when I think of it, I don't know. I thought I just loved rugby league back in the 80s, where it was hard. And it was there were some things that that maybe were a little over the top, and they got away. But that's how we loved it, and that's why we loved rugby league.
And you know what, Jeff? I got to say it's refreshing, and I might be just going outside the scope of what we were here to talk about, but I want to mention it here because I think we'll all respect what I'm about to say. There's a bloke now who runs a joint, Peter V'landys, who I find has brought back a lot of the old stuff, the old style. Go back to the suburban ovals.
Yeah.
Go back to what was great. And in the 90s, early 90s, as we all know, the Super League war came, and there were two of the moguls of the entrepreneurial world, which Rupert Murdoch and Kerry Packer, God rest his soul, and they fought and spent billions back then in the 90s, billions of dollars to buy this game of rugby league because this was the game that everyone wanted. They didn't want the AFL. They didn't want the soccer. They didn't want this is what they wanted. Packer went over after cricket and it revolutionised the one dayers and it became a legend and became, obviously that goes without saying. But he had no competition. This time he had Rupert Murdoch, News Corporation, who he wanted to compete against, and Murdoch wanted it bad. And I talked to the players that I played with at the time, and the money that they were offering them was just off the dial.
Yeah.
But what that says is two of the smartest or most wealthiest blokes in this country, they wanted the game of rugby league, and rugby league was never stronger than in the mid-90s when Quayle and Arthurson were running the joint.
Definitely.
So they created this thing called Super League and it ripped the heart out of the whole joint. How we survived that is beyond me. I don't know how the game, with all the lies, deceptions and all the greed that happened in that time, how the game mended itself and came back. But today, this year, Peter V'landys comes back and he brings everything great that we used to have back in the 90s. Yeah. He's bringing it back to life again, which I find very refreshing.
Oh, he's a fantastic administrator.
And he's a great administrator. Yeah. He had the courage he set a date, I'll never forget it. On the 28th of May, he said we're going to play football again. When we're in the biggest pandemic of all time, just coronavirus.
Everyone laughed.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And the AFL, if you remember, the AFL said we're looking around the 1st of September.
Yeah, at best.
And every day that went past, V'landys made sure that we were going to get back
picked
on.
a special day because that was my birthday.
Was that your birthday? The 28th, is it? Oh, God bless you.
But Benny, you'd be mad to doubt anything that Peter Volandis says, given what he's done in racing. Like, it's remarkable.
We
what he's
saved
done.
racing.
Yeah.
It goes without doubt. He saved the racing.
And to invent races like he has, to do the things that he has. And now he's talking about bringing back the scrum.
Yeah.
Has he spoken with you? Or
No, he hasn't spoken to me. But
what would you advise?
He's got Wayne Pearce on his board, which Junior, I think, he does. I know him and Junior are very close, and they talk a lot. And look, do I think that there's room for that? I think there's room for bringing back some stuff that was great in the older days. I mean, he goes out to the people. He asks the public.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, he knows that it's the public.
Of course.
It's the punters
That's who
that
pay.
make the game.
Of course.
100%.
They're the people who subscribe. So he's asking them and he's surveying them and he's doing a lot of research on what the people want. And it is what the people want. And if you go back to the Tina Turner commercials, and I love saying, because I just find that was one of the focal points of rugby league that just we went from strength to very, 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 very strong.
Yeah.
And it included the woman, the family, grabbing the kid, walking the street and going on the footy and the boys on the beach, which brought the sexism out, which for the women to really appreciate. And then the big hits, and it had everything. And then they had the song that everyone could relate to, and what you get is what you want. They followed on with another campaign, and it was fantastic. And I just feel that the game is in real good hands at the moment, in real good hands. In certain times where the people of Australia look for something to have to release their depression, their worries, their fears, and this time where we are right now. This is probably one of the scariest moments. We turn on the TV every night and on headline news, you've got this coronavirus ripping the guts out of this country and right around the world. But this bloke had something on the 28th of May. We're going back to rugby league. We're going back because people need a release, and this is the release, and he gave it to us. So, mate, 10 out of 10 to that bloke, and I just think the game is in real good stead, in real good hands now moving forward with his leadership.
Do you think he'll ever bring back the biff in rugby league?
Do you know what? It's funny you asked that question. No, the answer is a quick no.
Yeah.
But I think, and I like Jeff's opinion on this because Jeff, the greatest events in the world at the moment are the heavyweight title champions of the world in the boxing and the WFs and the
MMA.
The MMA.
Yeah.
They're the biggest, and they're fights. That's elbows, kicks, punching, and they're the most watched and sought after. And they're brutal. When they promote rugby league in state of origin, they look at all the biffs, don't they? And all the big hits and the shoulder
Origin
charges.
was famous for the biffs, yeah.
What I would do if I was I would say state of origin, you're allowed to we're going to bring back the shoulder charge. The shoulder, because they were big.
What happens then? But then you get used to it. You have this muscle memory. You do it in another game, you get sent off. It's just.
I can't condone the biff.
Yeah.
I can't condone that because it's just not a good. That's just not a good example for the kids.
Yeah.
And the kids are the kids who you invest in.
Well-
I don't believe the biff. No, but something like the shoulder charge to differentiate. To bring back,
Yeah,
toughness.
I mean, but that should be allowed in all games, not just state of origin. 'Cause like I said, you just make a mistake in state of origin. One of the guys who played shoulder charge and he gets set off. But what I'm saying is, look, the world's changed today with concussions and what we've learned about concussion and what we've learned about brain injury. I've donated my brain, Benny, to when I'm hopefully whenever it happens. But I mean, I just look at some of the sporting people today. Some people who I love and that are my friends, and I think, wow, they weren't looked after enough. And look, each one of us have that option. That's what we want to do. And with everything that I've done, every time I've stepped in the ring, I'm prepared to die.
Say this, Jeff.
I'm prepared to get knocked out. But what I want to say is this: that I would have loved to think that the NRL, the AFL, the soccer, that when these incidents happen and somebody they're not feeling well, that they're looked after properly. And to this day, I still say that. All organisations don't look after their previous and their past players good enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think it's the mental health that you have after playing a sport like whether it be golf, whether it be
all of a sudden you're doing nothing, you miss it.
It's the mental health that you invest. They rise them up and you become the hero on a pedestal whilst they're playing. But mate, they forget them very quickly, don't they, Jeff? And the impact that these poor professional human beings who all they know better is getting up in the morning, do sprint training, weight training, ball work, and video sessions with the players. And then all of a sudden it stops. It stops, bang. And
What do
because
they do?
there's about 4 or 5 blokes who can continue on in the media, if they're lucky, in all of the people that retire, then they have to go to a skill or to the world that they have to now make a living.
But let me ask you a question. How many times do you think you got concussed and still played?
Oh.
I mean, I remember playing against Balmain. I was knocked out in the first couple of minutes, but I still played against Penrith. I remember being not even remembering the game. But, I mean, listen, concussion is so important today. People don't realise. And I want to take my hat off to the Roosters with Luke Keary and stuff. I was blessed that my young Brock Jarvis, who I train, let me read on some, because I, again, think, everything, just looking after people and think we're tough. But Brock let me read a little bit on concussions, and 4 to 6 weeks is needed immediately. For you to recover. And I mean, it might sound a long time, but listen. Do we want to think about Benny winning the grand final for us, or do we want to think about Benny being an amazing dad and looking after his family after? And we always think of Benny winning the grand final. We don't think of Benny and his family after it. We've got to change our little
Very good point, Jeff.
thing around, and that's what I'm all for these days. I'll stop the fight much earlier than too late. I'll never let my fighters get hurt anymore.
Well, it's changed so much. I mean, it used to be a badge of honour that you get.
Oh, yeah, toughness. Don't be weak. Don't be a weak
yeah,
so-and-so. Get back up there and get back into it.
Well, they didn't have to say that to you, Benny. They didn't have to say that to you.
No.
You just got up anyway.
Yeah, you did.
That was your mental capacity.
Yeah.
That's what we done.
Concussions and also being covered in blood at times, Benny, and the enduring image probably of your rugby league career is you with your mum at the City Football Stadium after one of your great State of Origin matches when she came out and got through security to mop the blood. Do you have that up in your house? You must do. That's just an incredible moment in sport.
Look, it's funny. To share that 3 minutes with your mother, I mean, I'd have traded everything for it.
Yeah.
Mum jumped the fence. She got through all the security guys, and there's 15 seconds to go, and there's my mother wiping the blood off my head.
Those
She couldn't give a shit about
these mums are used to that.
She couldn't give her 2 hoots about anything else, so she was worried about her son. And that is where you talk the relationship of how everyone loves their mum. I mean, my God, and to share that moment with my mother, and yes, I have got it up. I have about 2 or 3 things up in my house, and of those 3 things, there's one photo of me and my mother with that moment, and that is without doubt to share that moment with Mum was. And it wasn't meant to be a moment. It was just one of those Mother Nature where mother sees a son bleeding to death from ear to ear, and she just couldn't give a shit about the game. Runs on and says, "Are you okay? Are you, mate? Get off!" She's wiping the blood off my head, and that was one of the great moments, And Mum now has got full dementia. Mum doesn't even know when I walk in the room now. She won't even see and recognise me, and it's sad. But To know that, and they did. I just want to share this one story.
You talk about this, and it's fantastic
because they did the 10 greatest moments in State of Origin history, and they flew us up to Lang Park, and Mum was all gone with them, and we up there with my sister Ella, which Jeff knows. My sister and myself took Mum up to the State of Origin for Ella to look after Mum, and then when they put it on the big screen and they showed the 10 moments, and Mum looked up there, she looked at me and she goes, "Oh my God, I remember that so clearly. I was so worried about you at the time." And I thought, my God, and she hasn't remembered anything. And for that one split, for that 15 seconds, you think, oh, man, how special is that? So, to be able to talk about that, Ben, and define that was one of those great moments where it was very special, special again with sharing the love of what we spoke about early in the part with your family.
Yep.
It's a big part. And we talk about family. I mean, you won't get closer than what you see with Jeff and his family, and you can see his kids growing up and everything, first, second and third priorities about your family. And the same was with us when I was growing up, and I'm sure with everybody out there listening right now.
Yeah, definitely.
There's so much more to talk about in terms of your Origin career, but your Australian Kangaroos career, you had some remarkable performances. There was a series over in the UK, which was probably the highlight of it for you.
Yeah, 1990, we got beat at Wembley first game, and I wasn't the test hooker. Kerry Wallace was the hooker at the time, and Bozo made some big changes. And this was we're looking down the barrel of losing the test. The Ashes for the first time in God knows how long. And a lot of pressure. And they had a very strong English side. The second game was at Old Trafford. We had the luxury and the joy of Sir Alex Ferguson taking us around the great oval and showed us all the behind the scenes, and I'm starting to shiver here because I remember that so clearly. And then we went out at Old Trafford, second game. We had to win this game. Bozo actually made some big changes. He sacked Alfie, he sacked Kevy Walters, he brought in Sticky, he brought in Napa, and he brought in myself at hooker for Walters. And they were big changes. Big changes made, for big decisions. And Bozo was under enormous pressure, and we're just making sure. And I remember Ricky Stewart scored that, passed that intercept pass. Yeah. And there's only like 4.5 minutes to go, and we're looking down the barrel of losing the Ashes. And, mate, probably one of the greatest tries I've ever been in.
Yeah.
My God, that try in the right-hand corner at Old Trafford was something that I will never, ever forget. And that is one of the greatest tries and one of the greatest moments playing for your country. You hear the blokes like the likes of a Kerry Packer. He would do anything to represent his country. Even if you could represent his country in marbles, it would have been the greatest honour to represent your country. So to represent your country, capacity crowd, second test, Old Trafford, my God, doesn't get much better than that.
And then game 3 at Ellen Road.
Ellen Road was game 3, and that was not all our one way. That was hard stuff. And I remember actually Michael Hutchins from INXS came into the dressing room after that game.
Yeah.
Michael Hutchins and Andrew Farris, they came in. They were playing at Wembley the following week, and they came into the dressing room and. Michael asked, how do I get your jersey? And oh, my God.
Here you go.
I ripped it off. Mate, it's yours.
How do I get your undies?
And mate, it was one of those special moments, that you can share.
Greatest player you played with?
Greatest player, probably blocker. I say that with...
Well, he's your best mate. You have to.
He was probably my best mate. You throw in Peter Sterling. You throw in Wally Lewis, Ellery Hanley, Brett Kenny.
All those guys you played against.
Hey,
Toughest you played against.
The toughest was probably Ray Price.
Hardest to tackle.
Hardest, Gordon Tallis.
Oh yeah.
My God, Gordon Tallis. His elbows and knees all over the joint.
So I love Parramatta. Why was Ray Price so good?
Oh, because he was such a professional. You talk about professionalism. He was ahead of himself. This bloke was in an era, 3 or 4 eras beforehand, and everything he had to be perfect. He was Mr. Perpetual Motion. His toughness and his perfection were second to none. And he was the backbone of that. He made that Parramatta mob look pretty because he was tough in every way. On and off the full, he was tough, but there was no tough. I remember we played against them and they were beating us by about 30 points. Yeah. And I think Taylor dropped the ball and Price just went off at him saying, I said, mate, you led him by 30. He goes, yeah, we should be leading by 40. And I'm like, oh, jeez. Give us a break, mate. Like, for goodness sake. That's toughness.
You had some very different types of coaches through your career, Warren Ryan, Alan Jones, and the like. How do you look back on those guys?
Well, that is look. I had Frank Stanton was my very first coach. Who was Frank legend, coached Australia back then, and Terry Fernley, Jack Gibson, Bob Fulton, Gus Gould, Warren Ryan. Ron Willey. I mean, there were plenty of them. Yeah. Bill Anderson. Look, all different, all very, very different, and all in their own manner. I mean, I've never seen a bigger clone than Phil Gould off Warren Ryan, and he was his understudy at the Bulldogs back then when the Bulldogs.
Yeah, 100%.
And he cloned Warren Ryan.
You down first.
They were. But Gus had that one step further. He was able to communicate better with the player than I thought Warren Ryan did. He had a little bit of, Gus would always make up a little story that'd get you fired up a little bit more. Right. But their coaching habits, their tactics, their ethics, the behaviours, all Warren Ryan. So you look at Warren Ryan as basically the Don of, and Jack Gibson at State of Origin level was extraordinary. And then you got Bozo, the great, at the Australian level. Donnie Furner, God rest his soul, back in '86 was a lot of different characters. The one factor, they're all different. and they prepare you for the games, and they've got 13 different personalities that they've got to abide by, and the trick of that is to get the 13 personalities into one energy. To get out in the paddock. And see, a bloke like Brett Kenny would almost sleep before a kick-off of a State of Origin. And there's a bloke like Blocker Roach who's almost ripping the doors off ripping the doors down, headbutting the brick wall. Yeah. So you have those different personalities, and it's hard to motivate 13 people equally.
Everyone's got different triggers.
They've all got their different personalities and different behaviours. And a good coach, I see, it's just like a good manager in work, is to be able to recognise the strengths and weaknesses of those, and then get all that energy into the one and get out in the football paddock and play as one. And that's what I find the Melbourne Storm being so consistently great over the last decade under Bellamy. He has just been able to get that side. Doesn't matter, they lose the great players. I mean, they've had the Slaters and Inglis, they've had some terrific players. Folau all move away, but he replaces them. And they seem to have the same ethic, the same value, and the same energy when they get on that football paddock. And that is the remarkable thing that I think of a coach who's a very good coach. That's the difference. That's the differentiator, is how they can gel all the players to go out there and give it the best. And that's where Phil Gould was very good at State of Origin. Yeah. He'd bring them all together, and he'd know to kick someone up the arse, and he'd know to put his arm around someone. And that was that's the power of being the great coach.
Yeah. We're talking before about some players being lost after they finish playing rugby league, but
plenty of them.
You've been really successful after you finished rugby league in business and being an entrepreneur and whatnot. What do you put that down to? Did you always have that entrepreneurial inclination when you were playing rugby league?
I put it down to something very simple. And it's in any sport. The greatest thing I've ever done is relate and do exactly the same thing I did to play in rugby league into the business world. And all the ethical tactics, all the methodology, all the attributes that you have on the football paddock, you put into the business world. And I say this, as a business, you get up in the morning, you roll your sleeves up, you have a shave, you go to work, and you rely on your left and right hand person to make you better. You work hard, you discipline in different ways. You set yourself goals. I mean, you do all that as a sportsman.
Yeah.
And if you can implement those same ethics into the business world, and that's exactly what I did.
Well, if you see what he's saying earlier when he said about what his parents done, how they worked and stuff, and how he wanted to prove everybody wrong as an elite player. Well, not many people go on after league to be successful. Yeah. And I think that I've known Benny for a long, long time, and it's always been his inner strength and his self-belief that he's going to be able to do anything that he puts his hands on, he's going to work hard to achieve. And I think that's
But Jeff, I've also find it very hard being at the top, like these athletes, these footballers or boxing people, whoever, anyone that's played professional sport, they've reached their goal, they retire, and it's the ugliest word in the dictionary is retire, because when you retire, you think that you're an old man walking along the beach
putting your feet up.
Yeah, but you don't. It's a new career. I say it's the end of a chapter of a book. You pick up a new book and start reading again. And, God only knows if that book's going to be better than the one that you thought that you just finished. And that book that I had playing rugby league was a great book.
Yeah.
But, mate, I've had some classics after.
And the next few books have been great as well. So that's what I'm saying. It's the individual themselves. I mean, if you want to work hard, you want to, if you want to, well, you've got, like I said, I believe this. Everybody has that mindset. I think everybody has an amazing gift. It's just about working hard and going and finding that gift. I mean, whoever knew I was going to box and I want to box, what I'm saying. But if after sport you've been successful in sport, you want to work hard and I think people choice is really important. I've always said, if you're with the right people, you'll make good decisions,
It's funny. I was asked to do a motivational speak to a group of the corporate people of AMP, the top, the echelons of AMP. These people are on 2 million plus salary.
Team.
And their minimum bonus is 2 or 3 million. These are, they've asked me. There were 12 of them, and they've asked me to come and do a motivate. How do I motivate these people who are making stupid amounts of money?
But it's easy, Benny, because when they look at what you've done, that's motivational. So that's sitting there is motivational.
So what I did,
share your story.
And I asked Alan Jones. I said, Jones, I've got this dilemma, mate. They've asked me to do this motivational speech. He goes, well, son, do what you've done to the best of your ability, and that's play for Australia. And I thought, yeah, you're right. You know, like, and then all the attributes that made you get to that place of playing for Australia, you tell them.
Yeah, how you got there? That's
Because
right.
that is what got you to the highest pinnacle. So I walked into the room and I said, the first thing, you could see these people weren't very interested. I'm thinking, they don't know rugby. I mean, it's down Melbourne. Like these blokes, I'm thinking, my God, what are we doing? So I said, mate, I'll tell you what I have done here. I've done something that none of you have done here, and that's play for my country.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they all started looked at me and I thought, yeah. And I'll tell you how I played for my country, and the same attributes and the same principles and the same ethics that played for Australia has made you where you are today. So I'm trying to get you to the next level, and God only knows what that is. And if you're comfortable in your zone, you shouldn't be in this room. You've got to go to somewhere extraordinary outside that circle and become even better.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I had him by the throat, you know. And as we were saying, you start to introduce. I mean, you roll the sleeves up. You do the hard work. You do the disciplinary things. You do the sacrifices. You do your homework on the opposition. You do all that type of stuff. And the same thing happens in business. And that is how
You
elementary.
do what you think your opposition aren't doing. You do more than them, and you're successful.
That's exactly what you do, isn't it, Jeff? Like in business, what are your competition doing? So if they're doing that, you've got to do it better.
Yeah.
So, and it's like we watch the video and watch them fight in their style. So if their styles, they're very quick with the left hook or not, you've got to be better. You've got to be ready for it and do one better. And that's what you train for. Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely so. I know you've got to get somewhere, Benny.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It's a huge honour for me.
Oh, no.
Hey,
Jeff, just for your listeners, because they can't see what's happening here, I'm surrounded here by the greatest memorabilia. Yeah. This is just something extremely special. Where Jeff, I think every one of these great sports people
just
in different.
Anybody to come and break in?
No. I don't think anyone will be going to break into your joint, Jeff. But mate, you obviously your journey has been remarkable. I've been I've admired Jeff Fenech. Before I ever knew Jeff Fenech, he was one of my heroes.
I'm blessed to have you.
Mate, honestly, I'm just in awe of all this memorabilia here. So, you yet to see any of my photos up here.
Yeah. we're all waiting for a start.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Benny.
Well, thank you.
Don't forget to subscribe, Standing 8, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify.